Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle in the series Freemasonry and Satanism. Series number 62, part 3. Wasn't going to do 3 parts with the Open Conspiracy by H.G. Wells. But it's just very interesting information and words right out of his mouth. We left off with the story he wrote, An Open Conspiracy, and we're up to chapter 7. So I'll jump right to it and let you decide. Remember, I said a lot of people tell me that they don't believe there is a conspiracy to create a new world order. And they say the politicians and all those people just aren't that smart. Or they ask me, who's behind all this? What's going on? That's why I do these videos. So in chapter 7 of H.G. Wells' Open Conspiracy, the title is, What Mankind Has to Do. I suppose that title says a lot. So let me go at it. Before we consider the forms and methods of attacking this inevitable task of reconstruction, it will be well to draw the main lines and to attempt some measure of the magnitude of that task. 1928, 1930, H.G. Wells. What are the new forms that it is thus proposed? So what are the new forms that are proposed to impose upon human life? Impose. And how are they to be evolved from and imposed upon the current forms? So they want to take the reality of 1930 and impose a new reality. And against what passive and active resistances has this to be done? So he sees in the future there will be resistance. I'm reminded of the Borg in Star Trek. Resistance is futile. And with the Supreme Court yesterday or recently, saying that the state laws banning gay marriage were unconstitutional. That's going to change the world. And a good portion of the Supreme Court are Jewish people. And Zionism is a very active movement. And that is about creating a new world order controlled from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Crazy. And Tel Aviv was most recently voted the most popular gay city in the world. Gay destination. Crazy. So back to what mankind has to do, and these new current forms of reality have to be imposed on the old forms of reality. You know, if you translate that, it means they want to get rid of Christianity and bring in Luciferism. The Luciferic, satanic religion. Hence the name of my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. I probably should have named it Illuminati and Satanism, or Zionism and Satanism. But I keep reminding myself and anyone who watches my videos of that, so I think everybody gets it. All those mystery schools of occultic schools of Babylon are all one and the same, no matter what you call them. Knights of Columbus, Scottish Rite, York Rite, Illuminati, Knights, Templars, Jesuits, Zionists, Kabbalah students, Hollywood, banksters, elitists. Now, the most comprehensive conception of this new world is of one politically, socially, and economically unified. Now, the most comprehensive conception of this new world is of one politically, socially, and economically unified. Within the frame fall all the other ideas of our progressive ambition. So I guess when you're progressive, you are for the New World Order. When you're progressive, you will be for getting microchipped. When you're progressive, you will be for gay marriage. And all the other decadent realities that come with it, like Bruce Jenner being changed into a female Caitlyn Jenner, and much more craziness. My opinion there, along with many others. Moving on here with H.G. Wells. They do not see a way of escape from the patchwork of governments that grips them and divides mankind. Alright, so there are many people that are going to resist this New World Order, and they do not see a way of escape from the patchwork of governments that grips them and divides mankind. The great majority of human beings have still to see the human adventure as one whole. One whole. That reminds me of the Borg in Star Trek. Everybody has to become part of the whole. They're obsessed by the air of permanence and finality in established things. They accept current reality as the ultimate reality. As the saying goes, they take the world as they find it. But here we are writing for the modern-minded, and for them it is impossible to think of the world as secure and satisfactory until there exists a single world commonwealth. And like I say, they're lying. It's more of a Platonic elites ruling an enslaved class of people. That's what they call a single world commonwealth. Preventing war and controlling these moral, biological, and economic forces and wastages that would otherwise lead to wars. Remember, these people who are doing this have controlled the world all along for the past couple thousand years. And that if the New World is created, they will still be the ones in charge, but they'll have a much more modern way of dealing with people instead of wars. If they're microchipped and other means of canceling them, they'll be able to kill off people anytime they want. Microwave transmissions, microchips, sending in an extraction team to take them out of society if they try to stir things up and wake people up. Let us make clear what sort of government we are trying to substitute for the patchwork of today. Every sentence I read in this guy's book, H.G. Wells, says what they're doing. There's no mystery here. The method of direction of such a world commonwealth, they use nice words, it's communism. Same thing that Hitler did, took over dictatorship. And send the rest of the people to the gas chamber they don't want. What's it going to take for people to get it? I got hundreds of hours of videos I've been making reading from books. The method of direction of such a world commonwealth, got a bug biting me, is not likely to imitate the methods of existing sovereign states. It will be something new and altogether different. It doesn't mean it's good, because it's different. Obama said we would be getting change. That was his campaign logo, slogan. And we didn't get any change. He was a clone of Bush. Even a lot of Bush's advisors and support staff wound up on the Obama team. The same ones that were supporting Clinton. All right. This point is not yet generally realized. It is too often assumed that the world commonwealth will be, as it were, just the one heir and survivor of existing states, and that it will be a sort of mega-rarium, a mega gigantic size, of the same form and anatomy of its predecessors. But a little reflection will show that this is a mistake. There will be little need for a president or a king to lead the marshaled host of humanity. The marshaled host of humanity. Does that mean martial law? Marshaled host of humanity. So everybody will be penned up, secured, caged in. No freedoms to travel. Marshaled host of humanity. For where there is no war, there is no need for any leader to lead host anywhere. And in a polyglot world, a parliament of mankind or any sort of council that meets or talks is an inconceivable instrument of government. Which reminds me something very scary video I was watching today. Artificial intelligence. Apparently this Jade Helm program, dispersing troops all around the United States and participating in exercises to extract dissidents, insurgents, resistors to the New World Order is taking place. But what's really scary, the artificial intelligence software programs, like an app for your phone or your computer, is going to be running all these programs and monitoring algorithms and things from your cell phone, your computer, your TV, your checking account, your habits, even monitoring your emotions and who you talk to. So the computer is going to make a decision on who gets selected to be extracted from society. So any free thinker, anybody who sees the obvious truth, the computer is going to pick it up and make a determination of instant death or imprisonment or for retraining. I guess the computer will make a decision how far you've gone to the clear-headed awareness of the conspiracy versus just slightly awake and young enough and able to be used as a slave. Computer software controlled war. No generals, no captains. There will be the low-level lieutenants and the selected troops who drop out of a helicopter in your front yard, grab you, hoist you up, or put you in a van, and you're gone, and a computer made the decision. No feelings, no empathy, just software. Wow. The voice will cease to be a suitable vehicle. Your voice will cease to be a suitable vehicle. World government, like scientific perhaps, will be conducted by statements, criticism, and publication that will be capable of efficient translation. Just think of that. Computers deciding what to do with you next. What if you're past 50 and they decide, because of population reduction, there's no reason to sustain you. Life support systems, food, water. So you go to a FEMA camp, and like I said in the last video, Eisenhower's German camps after World War II that were POWs, that he retitled Disarmed Enemy Combatants, so he could put them in big FEMA camp type things and not give them water and not give them food. No toilet facilities. They were crowded elbow to elbow, not enough room to lay down. So they had to go to the bathroom right there in the field, dying of disease. Eisenhower. General Patton tried to intercede. The Red Cross tried to intercede. But Eisenhower was probably under the direction of the Illuminati monsters, banksters, ruling the world. Back to H.G. Wells. The fundamental organization of contemporary states is plainly still military, and that is exactly what a world organization cannot be. Well, the world organization in 2015 is definitely military. The weapons, the aircraft carriers, even Brazil. Crazy. France. They're arming up and staffing up. Flags, uniforms, national anthems, patriotism, sedulously cultivated in church. Patriotism sedulously cultivated in church and in school. The brag, the blare, the bluster of our competing sovereignties belong to the phase of the development of the open conspiracy will supersede. So there will be no more flags, uniforms, national anthems, patriotism, which is sedulously cultivated in church, by the way, and in school. And those sovereignties will be the phase of development that the open conspiracy will supersede. Do you know what you're getting? What this book says, H.G. Wells? We have to get clear of that clutter. So national anthems, patriotism, which is sedulously cultivated in church and school, is clutter, according to H.G. The reasonable desire of all of us is that we should have a collective affairs of the world managed by suitably equipped groups. That would be the Jewish people. And they have never been known to have any kind of empathy or mercy or sympathy or fairness. Not all Jews, of course. Go look up Zionism in images and you will see many Jews are trying to warn the rest of us of these Zionist Jews and other occultic, satanic Luciferian groups such as the Freemasons, Illuminati, Jesuits, Kabbalah, Hollywood crowd. So the suitable groups will be taking over the collective affairs of the world, of the most interested, intelligent, and devoted people, and that their activities will be subjected to a free, open, watchful criticism, restrained from making spasmodic interruptions, but powerful enough to modify and supersede without haste or delay whatever is weakening or unsatisfactory in the general direction. H.G. Wells, page 31, The Open Conspiracy. Wow. And that's just the first 18 minutes. Continuing on, a number of readers will be disposed to say that this is a very vague, undefined, and complicated conception of world government. And again, I'm only reading my highlighted portions. If I'm jumping around, that's why. But the formal heads, the kings, presidents, and so forth, are really not the directive heads. So he's telling us right now that the people who are leading the nations, like Obama or Merkel in Germany or whoever, they're really not the directive heads. The snake is much bigger than that. Zionism, the Illuminati, much higher level of the pyramid is where the directions are coming from. Guiding humanity, and according to the Bible, guiding humanity in a very wrong direction. Satanism. They are merely figureheads. That's what it says here. I want you to believe me. Pause it and read it. They do not decide. They merely make gestures of potent and dignifying acquiescence when decisions are put to them. They are complicated shams. Are you going to believe HG or not? The present rudimentary development of collective psychology obliges us to be vague and provisional about the way in which the collective mind may be define its will for the purpose of administrative action. There's Jade Helm going on right now, part of it administrative action. And with its computers, with the cell phones, which on another video I watched today, probably the same one. One of the reasons Obama gave cell phones to all the poor people, the black people, because everybody has to be under some kind of mind control and monitored, whether they can afford it or not. They even gave the Indian reservations free Wi-Fi. So they don't want anybody left out of this New World Order loop. Alright, moving on to another chapter, chapter 8. Broad characteristics of a scientific world commonwealth. Wow. Broad characteristics of a scientific world commonwealth. Everybody microchipped, gigantic computer systems located all over the world, monitoring everybody, their actions and their emotions, and who they talk to, what they do, where they go. And the computer decides if you're acceptable or not acceptable. And could an extraction team be sent to your house? That's why they want everybody to register the guns and rifles as a part of an appeasement to the gun confiscation, because the computer will know who has the guns, and people will be knocking on your door. Resistors will probably be shot. So don't think you can open the door and say, "No, I'm not surrendering my gun." Those may be the last words you say if you get them all out. Does they think the means justifies the end? Almost had that backwards. Alright, chapter 8. Continuing our examination of the practical task before the modern mind, we may next note the main lines of contemporary aspiration within this comprehensive outline of a world commonwealth. A successful open conspiracy merely to seize governments and wield and retain world power would be at best only the empty frame of success. It might be the exact reverse of success. And I seriously think and agree that the real goal, like the Georgia USA Guidestones say, is to eliminate 90% of the population, the goyim, as the Zionist Jewish people call us, or the profane, as the Masonic Freemasons call us. And they probably want to keep enough non-Jewish people, non-Freemasons, non-Jesuits, non-banksters to be slaves for farms and factories, and sex slaves, and slaves for entertainment. Like in Rome, when they put people in the arena to fight or food for the lion. Who knows how insane these psychopaths will be? Well, we already know in the Middle East, the murdering is going on every day. In the United States, in the Jade Helm, they're putting troops all over the nation for exercises with no necessary explanation needed to give the people. Who do they think they are? Aren't they the servants of the people, our government officials? It is because we desire a unification of human direction, not simply for the sake of unity, but as a means of release to happiness and power, that it is necessary at any cost, in delay, in loss or effective force, in strategic and tactical disadvantages, that the light of free, abundant criticism should play upon that direction, and upon the movements and unifying organizations leading to the establishment of the unifying direction. Wow. Man is an imperfect animal. H.G. Wells just said it. I say the Jews call everybody that's non-Jews goyim, which means cattle. H.G. says here, man is an imperfect animal and never quite trustworthy in the dark. I completely disagree with H.G. Wells. I'm not an animal. I don't think most people are animals. I think these people controlling our world may be DNA deficient or mutated from some reptilian alien type thing. Neither morally nor intellectually is he safe from lapses. And I've known something about psychology since I went to college. Psychology 101. A lot of people know this. When somebody says something, you hold a mirror to them and bounce what they say back. So if somebody says, that guy's a thief, she's a thief, he's a thief, and is accusing people of being a thief everywhere, it's because that individual is a thief. It's called rationalization. If somebody says, oh, I see that guy looking at that little girl, or that guy's a pervert, or this guy's doing that, and they accuse people of being perverts or peepers or whatever, hold the mirror, and that person is the pervert and the peeper, the rapist, child molester. When the accuser is doing it all the time, they're rationalizing their behavior because they think what they are is normal, that everybody else must be doing it. So when this writer says, neither morally nor intellectually is he safe from lapses, H.G.'s talking about himself. Remember, this is the guy who, while married, dated several of those New Age pro-abortion and women's rights and other communist idea people, women, had children by them, and even named one of the kids with the first name after his current wife and the second name after that lady that we went over in my previous video, that you can find online on H.G. Wells' biography on Wikipedia. I don't know if it's his biography, but the Wikipedia about H.G. Wells. Psychology 101, called rationalization. A murderer doesn't think he's bad. He thinks everybody else is a murderer. A thief doesn't think he's bad. He doesn't walk around going, I'm bad, I'm bad. He justifies it by thinking other people are murderers and that's how they got their money or their fame or how they survive. It's a mental illness. Okay, a movement to realize the conceivable better state of the world must deny itself the advantages of secret methods or tactical insincerities. Well, we can say that New World Order people aren't following that advice. The open conspiracy against the traditional and now cramping and dangerous institutions of the world must be an open conspiracy and cannot remain righteous otherwise. It is lost if it goes underground. Well, in today's world, we know it is underground. We know the people are medicated either with the fluoride in the water or drugs given by the doctor or other drugs or alcohol, and also the TV, radio, media, mind control, propaganda. That has also been been made legal by legislation in the USA. We went over that in a previous video. It is legal for them to do Sandy Hook. Bring in actors, pretend there was a bunch of school kids killed for public consumption. If you go on the internet and just look at some of the videos on the Sandy Hook school shooting, I think you too will come to the conclusion that it was a setup. It was all planned. It was all for media public consumption. It's easy to get things done like gun confiscation and gun legislation if you have events like that to convince the senators and representatives to be swayed. And then you also threaten them that if they don't vote that way and something else happens, and it will because they're causing it, that those senators will be blamed. Very sinister thinking. This candid attempt to take possession of the whole world, page 35. This candid attempt to take possession of the whole world, this open conspiracy of ours. Remember, he was raised with the elites of London, and they're definitely into a lot of pedophilia according to the news. Satanism, witchcraft. This open conspiracy of ours must be made in the name of and for the sake of science and creative activity. And if you believe that, I've got some swampland for you for sale in Florida. Its aim is to release science and create activity at every stage in the struggle, must be watched and criticized, lest there be any sacrifice of these ends to the following of the conflict. The security of creative progress and creative activity implies a competent regulation of the economic life of the collective interest. So they have to take over all of the farming and gas and oil and all of our resources for the security of the creative progress and creative activity, and a competent regulation of the economic life in a collective interest. Do you believe that? Remember, he wrote this in 1928, 1930, revised. There must be food, shelter, and leisure for all. I don't see that happening, 2015. Man does not live by bread alone. He eats that he may learn and adventure creatively, but unless he eats, he cannot adventure. And like the Georgia USA Guidestones say, they do want to rid the world of 90% of the population. So all well and good for those 10% left. Maybe 50% of them will be the elites, and then the other 50% will be the enslaved workers and sex slaves and entertainment slaves and whatever. It says, it moves on here. He cannot restrain the increase in his numbers. There they go, worrying about people, population again. The elitists do not want the common man to propagate. And he seems capable of still quite undefined expansions of his productivity per head of population. So they're just trying to say here is, I guess people with freedom are just not profitable. Intelligent control of population is a possibility which puts man outside competitive processes that have hereunto ruled the modification of species, and he can be released from these processes in no other way. Somebody's got to grow the corn, milk the cows, build the cars, clean the offices, pick up the garbage, make the pizza. There is a clear hope that later directed, here we go, whoa. There is a clear hope that later directed breeding will come within his scope. Suffice it for us here that the world community of our desires, the organized world community, conducting and ensuring its own progress requires a deliberate collective control of population and a primary condition. Wow. And with the advances in mind control, I'm going to go over this in a future video. But they have advanced so far right now in 2015. Predictive programming, we talked about that. And Fritz Springmeier's Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and his discussion of H.G. Wells and predictive programming, and H.G. Wells' involvement in a debate community and how that follows psychology, and that H.G. did study biology. So there's some very insidious thinking here. Requires a deliberate collective control of population in its primary condition. What I'm trying to say is they have advances right now that they can aim a signal at a person or monitor that person. Our electric signals in our brain are very weak. But just like those devices that can hear somebody from across a football field that are whispering, they've got devices now that can record your brain electrical activity, feed it into a computer, and understand what you're seeing and saying. Then they can also send a signal back to you and make you see and say and think things that they want you to think. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for weak people and probably people on certain kind of drugs, and more likely children, like the guy who did that recent shooting in South Carolina in a church, the black people, the white guy, the white kid. They have that technology to make him do that, to make people do that. And it involves the cell towers everywhere, the cell phone that you're holding, your laptop computer, your iPad, your TV. Why do you think they went from the old-fashioned TVs to the digital TVs? You suppose it had a nefarious motivation? Easier to program people? But they have that technology now. So we don't know how that kid got mind controlled like he did with all the evidence they had. The powers that be have plenty of patience. They could have been training him along with the Black Ops program of the secret agencies behind the government for weeks or months until they were ready to use him. That technology is possible, and I'm going to go over it in a future video real soon. Intelligence control of a population is a possibility which puts man outside the competitive process that have heretofore ruled the modification of species, and he can be released from these processes in no other way. Intelligent control of population is a possibility. There is a clear hope that later directed breeding will come in within his scope. Suffice it for us here that the world community of our desires, the organized world community, conducting and ensuring its own progress, requires a deliberate collective control of population in a primary condition. So it was worth rereading all that. The reproductive impulses operate indirectly. So they're worried about reproduction. That's one reason why they're promoting the gay agenda. Less reproduction. Nature ensures a pressure of population through passions and instincts that, given sufficient knowledge, intelligence, and freedom on the part of the woman, can be satisfactorily gratified and tranquilized if need be. So satisfactorily gratified and tranquilized if need be without the production of numerous children. So they want to eliminate the urge of women to have a baby, even if they have to tranquilize her. Thank you, H.G. Wells, for this New World Order guideline that some very well psychopathic people seem to be following. Very slight adjustments in the social and economic arrangements will, in a world of clear available knowledge and straightforward practice in these matters, supply sufficient inducement and discouragement to affect the general birth rate or the birth rate of specific types. Control the birth rate of specific types. Black people, maybe? Spanish people, maybe? Poor white people, maybe? As a direct sense of community may consider desirable, so long as the majority of human beings are begotten involuntarily in lust and ignorance, and so long does man remain like any other animal, under the molding pressure of competition for subsistence. Social and political processes change entirely in their character when we recognize the possibility and practicality of this fundamental revolution in human biology. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Are you hearing what... I'm not reading all of this. There's a lot more here. I encourage you to get the book. So I'm going to just move on to the next chapter. Chapter 9. No suitable utopia is now conceivable. This unified world towards the open conspiracy would direct its activities cannot be pictured for the reader in any static or stereotyped spectacle of happiness. So it cannot be pictured for the reader as any static or stereotyped spectacle of happiness, this new open conspiracy world. Mankind released from the pressure of population. 1928, 1930. They were worried about the population. There wasn't any population problem back then. There is no population problem now. But there is an elitist group of people who are worried about the mass amounts of people and the internet and other media and activities that mankind might wake up to their shenanigans and evil ways, and they have to protect themselves from that. And one good example of that is Israel and its 400 so-called nukes aimed at cities from Moscow to London. And if they don't get their way, or they get attacked, they have something called the Samson option. And they say they're just gonna go ballistic and insane and commit suicide and push the buttons and take the whole world down with it immediately. Nuke everybody. This is what we're dealing with, who is behind all this. Zionist Israel with the 400 nukes and the Samson option. Go look it up. That's an insane. These people are insane, psychopathic, sick. Mankind released from the pressure of population, a waste of warfare, and the private monopolization of the sources of wealth, will face the universe with a great and increasing surplus of will and energy. Well, those that are left alive, but I suspect if all the psychopaths are the only ones left ruling the world, they will probably eat up each other, and all the slaves that people left alive will probably suffer abundantly. Oh my God, it'll be horrible and insane. Right out of one of those weird, freaky, horrible sci-fi movies. Change and novelty will be the order of the day, of life. Each day will differ from its predecessor in its great amplitude of interest. Life, which was once routine, endurance, and mischance, will become adventure and discovery. And again, if you believe that, I've got some swampland for you in Florida. What is that state that says, don't tell me, show me? But if we look at what they're doing, it's certainly not what HG is saying. But we do know that they, for the last 100 years, they want to get rid of the people that are not them. It's not about overpopulation. It's just about people that they just don't want around. And they would like to steal all their resources and wealth. And probably let their young daughter alive, so they may have her as a sex slave. And if she has any younger children, they like them as little sex slaves until they grow older. Also, pedophilia. Got some sick people running this world. We believe that the persistent exploration of our outward and inward worlds by scientific and artistic endeavor will lead to the developments of power and activity upon which at the present we can set no limits nor give any certain form. And again, I'm reminded of those technologies now, like Jade Helm, artificial control of the military with algorithms and computer software that will decide who they kill, and other software programs and technologies that can mind control people and make them go do horrible things, murder other people. Complete mind control. MK Ultra is another name you need to look up. Project Paperclip, look that up. Project Montauk, look that up. We've got Black Ops programs since World War II. That stuff that Hitler was into, Project Paperclip, they grabbed all those scientists, brought them here to the USA. The German criminals gave them safe haven as long as they agreed to teach our scientists their nasty technologies that they had experimented on people of. And they brought all that into our world, and the citizens do not know anything about it, most people. And I said before that the magazine Nexus, I heard, I don't have absolute proof, but I do know you used to be able to go over to Books A Million and Barnes & Noble and buy them off the shelf, but now you cannot. And so I did some inquiries, and I heard because of the mind control articles in those magazines, they were not allowed to be sold in the USA. Crazy? Keep watching my videos. I'm going to go over that stuff. Read one of those books. Mind Reach is one book. We went over a lot of psychic research books and a lot of the occult books by Alice Bailey and Helena Blavatsky. So I think it's all in one, including the UFO alien propaganda. Our antagonists are confused. Our antagonists are confusion of mind, want of courage, want of curiosity, and want of imagination, indolence, and spendthrift egotism. These are the enemies against which the open conspiracy arrays itself. These are the jailers of human freedom and achievement. Chapter 10. I didn't highlight anything. I'll read the title. The open conspiracy is not to be thought of as a single organization. It is an organization of life out of which efforts, organizations, and new orientations will arise. I'm sure there's a lot here I'd like to read to you, but I want to get this video completed eventually. So how about chapter 11, which I did highlight. Forces and resistances in the great modern community now prevalent, which are antagonistic to the open conspiracy, the war with tradition. So we can certainly say gay marriage is not a tradition. So if you want to know what they're up to the opposite of the Ten Commandments, which is Luciferic religion, the sun god, Satanism, Ra, Osiris, Horus, the eye on the dollar bill, the Egyptian hieroglyphics, all those beasts with birds' heads or bird feet. And we've gone over that stuff in my previous videos, and we're going to go over some more of it in the future so that everybody can get it. We have now stated broadly, but plainly, the idea of a world commonwealth, which is the objective of the open conspiracy. So there's no ambiguity here. There's no confusion here. He says it right here. H.G. Wells. It must be necessarily not a class development, but a convergence of many different sorts of people upon a common idea. Its opening task must be the elaboration, exposition, and propaganda of this common idea, a steady campaign to revolutionize education and establish a modern ideology in men's minds, and arising out of this, the incomparably vaster task of the realization of its ideas. So again, the bottom line is Luciferium, Aleister Crowley, Do As Thou Wilt, who was famous for teaching and doing evil, sexual orgies, pedophilia with children, killing children. And a lot of people tell me they like Aleister Crowley. And if you take Crowley and plug it into a 666 calculator, it's 666. He rearranged the spelling of his name so that would be that way. These people are into witchcraft. They know what they're doing. Okay, page 48. These are the tasks not to be done in vacuum. They have to be done in a dense world of crowding, incessant, passionate, unco-oriented activists, the world of market and newspapers, seed time and harvest, birth, deaths, jails, hospitals, riots, barracks, and army maneuvers, false prophets and royal processions, games and shows, fires, storm, pestilence, earthquake, war. Wow, seems like we have all that going on. I guess the people following his instructions are making sure that happens. Every day and every hour, things will be happening to help or thwart, stimulate or undermine, obstruct or defeat the creative effort to set up the world commonwealth. It will be well to review the main antagonistic forces with which, from its very inception, the open conspiracy is now in conflict. All these states, wow, this sounds like the Pacific Trade Agreement here, touch upon the Atlantic, or its contributory seas, that would be NATO. They have all grown to their present form since the discovery of America. He's talking about all the countries bordering the Atlantic Ocean. They have a common tradition rooting in the ideas of Christendom. So all these countries bordering the Atlantic, tradition rooting in the ideas of Christianity, and a generic resemblance of method. Economically and socially, they present what is known in common parlance as the capitalist system. They want to destroy the capitalist system. But it will relieve us of a considerable load of disputations matter if we call them here simply the Atlantic civilizations and communities. The open conspiracy is not necessarily antagonistic to any existing government. The open conspiracy is a creative organizing movement and not an anarchy one. It does not want to destroy existing controls and forms of human association. Wrong, he's lying. Well, the people who are doing it now are not following that. But either to supersede or amalgamate them into a common world directive. So he says he doesn't want to change everything, but then he says he wants to change everything. So a world common world directed. So a dictatorship for a common world. If constitutions, parliaments, and kings can be dealt with as provisional, that's temporary, institutions, trustees for the coming age of the world commonwealth. So he wants all the political nations' leaders to stop thinking of themselves as a permanence of a country having a president or a king or a whatever, prime minister. They need to think of themselves as a provisional institution, which means temporary. Trustees for the coming age of the world commonwealth, and insofar as they are conducted in that spirit, the open conspiracy makes no attack upon them. So if they do think of themselves as provisional, willing to hand over their control to this new world order, then no attack upon them. The open conspiracy makes no attack upon them. It says that right here. Wow. H.G. Wells. In nearly every country of the world, there is, in deference to the pretended necessities of a possible war, a vast, degrading, and dangerous cultivation, get this, of loyalty. So if you're loyal, that's degrading and a dangerous cultivation of loyalty, and mechanical subservience to flags, uniforms, presidents, and kings. So like John Kennedy, they don't want a popular president, especially one that's going to expose them, so they have to kill him. The open conspiracy is necessarily opposed to all such implicable loyalties. The open conspiracy is necessarily opposed to all such loyalties. Did you hear what I just said? And still more so to the aggressive assertion and propaganda of such loyalties. So they will use any and all methods, including their ability to mind control people now, to get rid of these loyalties. And of course, with the protocols of Zion, look them up and read them, they want to create confusion throughout the world to make people go a little crazy. And they're doing a fine job of it, I might add. School shootings, motorcycle gang shootings. Who knows what they have in the agenda for our future? To continue their program for a world commonwealth, new world order, getting rid of Christianity. It says it all right here. When these things take the form of suppressing reasonable criticism, when these things take the form of suppressing reasonable criticism and forbidding even the suggestion of other forms of government, they become plainly antagonist to any comprehensive project for human welfare. They become manifestly, from a wider point of view, seditious, and loyalty to king and country passes into plain treason to mankind. I gotta read that again. They become manifestly, from the wider point of view, that's a crazily wide point of view, seditious and loyalty to king and country passes into plain treason to mankind. So if you don't go along with these people and you're loyal to your country and you're loyal to your president or your king, you're treasonous to mankind. There is little or no effort to restrain the aggressive nationalist when he waves his flag against the welfare of our race, and to protect the children from the world from the infection of his enthusiasms. So God forbid you're enthusiastic to say, I pledge allegiance. You're a traitor to humanity. Can't believe what I'm reading. In the great mass of modern community, page 50, in the great mass of modern community, there is little more than a favorable acquiescence in patriotic ideas. So in the great mass of modern community, there is a little more than a favorable acquiescence to the patriotic ideas. Where does he get this in 1930? But remember, he's over there in London, And he's probably practicing, at minimum, a new aged reality with the many women his wife lets him have sex with. And possibly because of a lot of the people who do that in London and the people he was associating with, he might be very well into the category of Aleister Crowley and Albert Pike, into the occult and into Satanism. Who knows? Will further investigation reveal more about H.G. Wells? A change in mental direction would be possible for the majority of people now without any violent disorganization of their intimate lives or any serious social or economic readjustment for them. So he thinks that people are just not patriotic anymore, and now is a good time to get them. Mental infection in such cases, oh, you got to read this. Mental infection in such cases could be countered by mental sanitation. So if you are patriotic and nationalistic, you love your country, then mental infection such as that could be countered by mental sanitation. A majority of people in Europe, and still a larger majority in the United States and other American republics, could become citizens of the world without any serious hindrance to their present occupation and with an incalculable vast increase in their present security. So like the Samson option of Israel, Zionism, the Jews, if anybody attacks them for killing all the Palestinian and all the Arabs and everything else they're doing, attacking Syria, wanting to nuke Iran or attack Iran, if anybody stands up to them, the Israelis, Zionism, and not all Jews are going along with this. And I've read that in Israel, if you embrace Jesus, you're liable to find a bomb in your mailbox. And a lot of countries with this Aliyah program of getting all the Jews all over the world to return to Israel, home, it's called Aliyah. They've caused much havoc, terrorism, murder, economic destruction, Argentina, Iraq, and other places in the world, because the Jews living there didn't want to leave. So a situation was created that they would want to leave. In the case of such people, no mental sanitation is possible without dangerous and alarming changes in their way of living. For a majority of these patriots, the open conspiracy unlocks the gates leading to the fussy paradise of eminence, respect, and privilege, and motions them towards the austere wilderness which does not present even the faintest promise of congenial, distinguished life for them. Nearly everything in human nature will be dispose them to turn away from the gates which open towards world peace. So like I was saying, they're threatening us with non-peace if we don't accept a new world order, which they promise peace. Well, they have the Georgia USA Guidestones saying they want to eliminate 90% of the population. How many people will acquiesce to their desires when they cause something crazy in the United States and declare martial law, and they say that the people are shooting each other, stealing food, so they have to take the guns? So they create the whole situation to an end that most people will not see coming. And then they tell you they have food and water for you at the FEMA camp. Go look up the Eisenhower video of men in the prison camps in Germany after the war. If they get you into the camp, they are not going to bring in food and water. You're going to stand there and die, and in your own excrement, and that you have to go to the bathroom where you stand. It's going to be horrible if they do what apparently Eisenhower did, that General Patton tried to fight him on. The class as a class will remain nonetheless antagonistic, about royal courts and presidential residences, in diplomatic, consular, military, and naval circles, wherever people wear titles and uniforms and enjoy pride and precedences based on existing political institutions, there will be the completest general inability to grasp the need for the open conspiracy. So the way we know the world now has to go away. Only individuals of exceptional liveliness, rare intellectual power, and an innate moral force can be expected to break away from the anti-progressive habits such class conditions impose on them. And I'm thinking now of the Supreme Court, which has quite a, for the percentage-wise, a high number of Jewish people in the Supreme Court, who apparently should, according to my study of Jewish people, no matter where they live in the world, they still consider themselves Israelis. So that's where their real loyalty lies. And so they voted to ban any state from banning gay marriage. So they are trying to socially change and cause chaos and anarchy all over the United States and the world. An American exaggeration of patriotism began as resistance to exploitation from overseas. The American, remember this guy is from London now and living with the elites. When America fought for its independence with the UK, United Kingdom, even the name, United Kingdom, for London and England and all that. United Kingdom. H.G. Wells. So he would have a tainted opinion of America. The American's habit of mind, in spite of his recent realization of the enormous power and relative prosperity of the United States and the expanding possibilities of their Spanish and Portuguese-speaking neighbors, are still largely self-protective against a now imaginary European peril. Well, I know Pierre Manot and some other people conspired behind the people of Europe's backs, and economically inside had the countries borrow money they couldn't pay back. They economically destroyed them intentionally. But Pierre Manot, who was the one who was secretly creating the European Union with all those nations losing their sovereignty to some unknown people who are now ruling their nations. If you put his name in the 666 calculator, it's 666. Eric Schmidt of Google is 666. Computer, 666. Verichip, 666. Santa Claus, 666. All kinds of words. You go look on the internet and see. There is something sinister, occultic, satanic, witchcrafty about all this. That's why they have a Lucifer agenda. And if you look up the devil, he does have the goat's head, the women's breast, and the male torso and goat's feet. So it is an entity of two sexes. Androxis, I forget how you say that. Androgyny. Chapter 12. The resistances of the less industrialized peoples to the drive of the open conspiracy. So far in our accounting of the powers, institutions, dispositions, types, and classes which will naturally oppose the open conspiracy, naturally, people like me, and most people who watch this video this far, because the ones who've gone over to the dark side would have already gone into a tantrum and turned this video off. Alright, we have surveyed only such territory in the domain of the future, world commonwealth, as is representative by the complex, progressive, highly industrialized communities based on a preceding landlord, soldier, tenant, town merchant, and tradesman system of the Atlantic type. They may imitate European nationalism to a certain extent. This is the resistance of the less industrialized peoples. So third world nations all over the world They may imitate European nationalism to a certain extent, but then it becomes a convenient form of self-assertion against the pressure of a realized political, social, and political inferiority. You got to give HG some credit here. He really thought out this little sinister plan quite well. You can see who he doesn't like. He doesn't like loyalty or patriotism or freedom of will. It's all for the common mind. The Borg in Star Trek. Resistance is futile. But to the less vigorous intelligences of our outer world, the new project of the open conspiracy will seem no better than a new form of Western envelopment, and they will fight a mighty liberation as though it were the further enslavement to the European traditions. One of the most interesting areas of humanity in this respect is the great system of communities under the sway and influence of Soviet Russia. Russia has never been completely incorporated into the European system. The reality of this vast empire remained in Asiatic despotism. So it is over there in the Asian area. And the European mask was altogether smashed by the successive revolutions of 1917, when the Jewish Bolsheviks, after World War I, sent some spies into Russia, killed the Tsar and his family, and in the next 10 to 15 years killed 66 or more, plus or minus, millions of Christians and good people. They purged the nation of all the unwanted people, and again, largely by starvation, interestingly enough. Like Eisenhower, and like what they're trying to do in the United States right now, in my opinion, with the HARP system and the sky spraying controlling the weather, causing droughts, eliminating a lot of the food supplies in our nation, even with the bird flu recently, and killing 30 million chickens and turkeys. One wonders if they're not going to be able to destroy most of the United States by starvation. The ensuing system is a government presiding over an enormous extent of peasants and herdsmen by a disciplined association of professing the faith and dogmas of Marx, as interpreted and qualified by Lenin and Stalin. So we see here HG talking about them, and he says favorable things about these mass murderers, communist, Bolshevik Jewish folks. In many ways, this government is a novelty of extraordinary interest. It labors against the enormous difficulties within itself and without. Well, it's murdering all the people so it doesn't have to feed them. Sorry for my opinion if you disagree, but that's what I see from my reading. Flung amazingly into a position of tremendous power. Flung amazingly into a position of tremendous power? It wasn't flung amazingly. The Rothschilds, Rockefellers, even the Bush family and all those people involved with Hitler. And these Marx and all that was in New York and all that. These spies were sent into Russia to kill the Tsar and family and take over the country. So flung amazingly into a position of tremendous power, its intellectual flexibility is greatly restricted by the urgent militant necessary for mental unanimity, and a consequent repression of criticism. A consequent repression of criticism. Is that what's going to happen here in the United States with this new law passing on banning any state from banning gay marriage? A consequent repression of criticism, and the computers monitoring everybody with Jade Helm. Will they detect anybody who says a criticism thing? And Zoom, you might even get a text on your phone fining you $100 or $1,000 for saying something that is not politically correct. Imagine the insanity that these psychopaths might push upon us. It finds itself separated intellectually and morally by an enormous gap from the illiterate millions over which it rules. So all the population they call illiterate millions. See how they look upon the populace? They think of the people in the United States as illiterate, as profane, as goyim, as cattle. Make no mistake. They didn't build those FEMA camps for nothing. The government, you can look this up, buying billions and billions of bullets, even the post office and other organizations, they didn't do it for nothing. Then why did they do it? Oh, chapter 13, resistances and antagonistic forces in our conscious and unconscious selves. Well, there is no we, and there can be no we, in possession of the open conspiracy. Just reading a little thing here because I'm trying to get through this. Finish this. Giving you a sampling. I'm skipping a lot of stuff here. Of what's in what H.G. Wells said and wrote. Spent a good portion of his life with this kind of thinking. The open conspiracy begins as a movement of discussion, explanation, and propaganda. So when you see Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, and all this other stuff, 9/11, it's all propaganda. They have exercises. They had a military exercise at 9/11. The nation's aircraft, military aircraft were on stand down. They had planes in the air pretending to fly into buildings with using Saudi Arabians as the actors in those staged military activities. And then in the meantime, the real thing happened. Sandy Hook, they were having an exercise at a school, fake shooting nearby. And then the real thing happened. The London-Boston bombing. They were having a fake exercise. And then the real thing happened. Do you get it? False flags. All right. Propaganda. And they made it legal here in the U.S. They passed legislation. So when one of the officials gets before the camera and says, everything we are doing is legal, he's correct. They passed legislation to be able to do the propaganda to protect them from prosecution. A new and happier world, chapter 14, a world community is awakening within the body of the old order to the possibility of its emergence. Our phrase, the open conspiracy, is merely a name for that awakening. It is the reaction of a rapidly progressing biological conception of life and of enlarged historical realizations upon the needs and urgencies of the times. In this book, we are attempting to define the system and to give it this provisional name. Essentially, at first, it is a dissemination of this new ideology that must occur. I do have a certain speech impediment problem with some words, and I apologize for that. But I have a natural good ability to learn how to speak languages. Si hablo español, sprechen Sie Deutsch, parlez-vous français? Isn't that weird? And I'm good at electronics and mathematics. And I can't seem to spell English words. I've had a horrible time all my life. And saying some words, so there's something with the wiring that allows me to say sprechen Sie Deutsch, parlez-vous français, and all that, but not be able to say some of these English words. Makes one wonder, who was I in a past life? And did I speak English? All right, it is the reaction of a rapidly progressing biological conception of life and of enlarged historical realizations upon the needs and urgencies of the times. In this book, we are attempting to define this system and to give this provisional name. Essentially, at first, it is a dissemination of this new ideology that must occur. The statement must be tried over and spread before a widening circle of people. Since the idea of the open conspiracy rests upon and arises out of the synthesis of historical, biological, and sociological realizations. Wow, that was a sentence. Since the idea of the open conspiracy rests upon and arises out of a synthesis of historical, biological, and sociological realizations, we may look for these realizations already in the case of people with sound knowledge of these fields. Such people will be prepared for acquiescence without any explanatory work. So they're recruiting people from our universities to start feeding the propaganda to us. And as we have known with a lot of professors and teachers and scientists, if you don't follow the party line, you're going to lose your job or be murdered. All right. We find that we have to deal with partial knowledge, with distorted views, and with a blank ignorance, and that a revision and extension of historical and biological ideas and a considerable education of economic misconceptions have to be undertaken. Such people will have to be brought up to date with their information. I have told already how I have schemed out a group of writings to embody the necessary ideas of the new time in a form adapted to the current reading public. I have made sort of a provisional Bible, so to speak, for some factors, at least in the open conspiracy. So he's saying this open conspiracy book I'm reading now is sort of a Bible for their plan of the New World Order. It is an early sketch. And remember, he later wrote the New World Order. As the current reading public changes, all this work will become obsolescent so far as its present form and method go. Ultimately, this developing mass of biological, historical, and economic information, rewriting history here, suggestion must be incorporated in the general education if the open conspiracy is to come to its own. Which reminds me, when I do these book reviews, I am aware that some of those books were probably published by these people to retrain or reprogram the public's perception of reality, like the UFO and alien books. Was that written for public consumption to steer them away from Jesus or God? And then in the left hand, they're bringing in the Luciferic, satanic, decadent agenda. And they've given us Bruce Jenner, who turns into Caitlyn Jenner, Miley Cyrus being twerked on stage, satanic rituals at football halftime shows, Grammys and Olympic openings with Lady Gaga, and so much more insanity. Meanwhile, they wrote books and pictures and sightings of UFOs and aliens who seem to have a very interesting description, even in ancient paintings, or in Aleister Crowley's description of the entity he was communicating with on the other side, looks almost like a gray alien. Look it up. At present, this propaganda has to go on among adolescents. So they have to go after our children. And if you go watch your kids' cartoons, you might be a little upset what they're saying to the kids while you're washing dishes or cooking. Oh, go watch the cartoons. If you only knew what they were saying to the kids. At present, this propaganda has to go on among adolescents and adults because of the backwardness of political conservation of existing educational organizations. So he's slamming the existing educational organizations, which we know these elitists have taken over the publishing of school books and what's in there. I remember I had 2 boys I was raising, and I looked in the book one day, and they had a paper inserted into the book about Jesus, saying that he was like all the other characters in mythology, like Zeus, that Jesus was a myth. Yes, I was shocked. All right, moving on, trying to get through this. But what will begin as adult propaganda, he uses the word propaganda a lot, doesn't he, must pass into the Kulturkampf, looks sounds like Mein Kampf, Hitler, to win our educational machinery from reaction and the conservation of outworn ideas and attitudes to the cause of world reconstruction. There you go. I gotta go drink of water. All right, moving on here. Trying to finish this up. Fundamentally important issues upon which humanity must be achieved from the onset are. So fundamentally important issues upon which secrecy must be achieved from the onset are. First, the entirely provisional nature of all existing governments and the entirely provisional nature, therefore, of all loyalties associated therewith. Sounds like a lawyer. Secondly, the supreme importance of population control in human biology and the possibility it affords us for a release from the pressure of the struggle for existence on ourselves. So there I go. The elites are worrying about themselves, and there's just too many people on the planet, and they don't want to share. I'd like to interpret what he's saying. Thirdly, the urgent necessity for protective resistance against the present traditional drift towards war. But these elites run the world. They created the wars. There didn't have to be one war. But when the Vatican's vaults were running out of gold, they just created a crusade, charging everybody a tax so they could stay in power. Groups coming into agreement upon these matters and upon their general interpretation of history will be in a position to seek adherents, enlarge themselves, and attempt to establish communication and cooperation with kindred groups for common ends. So they're telling us they're planning this worldwide. A handful of middle-class people in a small town may find its small resources fully engaged, at first in such things as, for example, seeing that desirable literature is available for sale or in the local public library, protecting books and new vendors from suppression. So the more of this satanic, Luciferic information is going to be made available for your children and you, if you want an interpretation of what I just read. Or influencing local teachers. Most parents of school children can press for teaching of universal history and sound biology and protest against the inculcation of aggressive patriotism. So they don't want you to be patriotic. They don't want your kids to be patriotic. Meanwhile, the people who moved to Israel are all very patriotic. They're all coming from all over the world, returning, called Aliyah. They have planes landing every day, and big, large groups have ceremonies welcoming them. And no other race but Jewish people are allowed to immigrate there. So nationalism and patriotism will be okay for the Israelis, but nobody else in the world under which they have enslaved will be able to allow to believe or think or behave that way, because you will be monitored by computers, cell phone computers, laptops, TVs, and your actions, credit card purchasing. Very weird, all of it. But also very true. Early constructive work of the open conspiracy. In such terms, we may sketch the practical and possible opening phase of the open conspiracy. We do not present it as a movement initiated by any individual or radiating from any particular center. I disagree. Right, this book is showing us that it's all planned. In this book, we are not starting something. We are describing and participating in something which has started. Well, the evil people have been ruling the world all along, causing mayhem and murder. It arises naturally and necessarily from the present increase of knowledge and for the broadening outlook of many minds throughout the world, and generally it becomes conscious of itself. So as the world advances and becomes more civilized and aware and educated, it seems these new world order elitists who have been ruling the world all along are freaking out, if you want, in my interpretation, and there's too many people, and they feel the need to corral society into this world commonwealth, take away everybody's freedoms and patriotism and nationalism. I mean, the United States is a huge country. For the amount of people we have, there's no need for any problems. But as Benjamin Netanyahu said, in Fink's Bar, you can look this up, the United States is a golden calf for them to fleece again and again and again. And they hate America and will sell off our country piece by piece until there's nothing left but a third world nation, and make us sorry for not agreeing to be their slaves. Benjamin Netanyahu. Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said during a heated argument in their Congress, "Don't worry about the USA, we control the USA." Today it may seem no more than a visionary idea. Tomorrow it may be realized as a worldwide force of opinion and will. Well, apparently they've taken over our Supreme Court and just attempted to make gay marriage a nationwide accepted norm. And with the mind-reading abilities and all the other technologies they have now, anybody caught being politically incorrect might become a crime. Heck, they can make laws saying propaganda events like Sandy Hook are illegal. They can make it legal from reading your mind and you're not gay. And if you're a Christian with a Bible, you might be a criminal and have to be beheaded. Look up truck drivers and YouTube videos about guillotines. Yeah, the truck drivers are delivering tractor-trailer truckloaders of guillotines to military FEMA bases or FEMA camps, Army. And they saw what was in the trucks and they tell all. So don't tell me it's not all planned. Why did they build all those FEMA camps? Why are they dispersing troops, tanks, and vehicles and soldiers all across the United States and allowing a computer to run the whole program and make decisions in seconds? All right, it says here, in its opening phase, in the day of small things, quite minor accidents may help or delay the clear definition and polarization of its main ideas. So quite minor accidents, or I'll call false flag incidences, may help define and popularize main ideas like gun removal. They keep doing enough of these false flags with the legalized propaganda theoretical actors and situations, with the politicians lying in part of the whole thing, and the PTT, the Pacific Trade Agreement. Apparently there's some secrets within that bill that are so secret that the congressmen and representatives are not allowed to read President Obama's Pacific Trade Agreement with the Pacific nations. Are they selling us down the river? It is impossible to foretell the speed of its advance. Its development may be slower or faster, direct or devious, but the logic of accumulating realizations thrust it forward will persist in thrusting it on, and sooner or later it will be discovered conscious and potent in the working religion of the most sane and energetic people. Meanwhile, our supreme virtues must be faith and persistence. So far as we have considered only two of the main activities of the open conspiracy, the one being its propaganda of confidence in the possible world commonwealth, and the other its immediate practical attempt to systemize resistance to militant and competitive imperialism and nationalism. Welcome to communism, is what I could interpret that to say. People in the United States are going to lose their inheritance, if you want me to say it another way. We have a vast nation here, and the federal government has taken over much of the land and made it off limits to citizens. And the farms, during 8 or 9 economic collapses artificially created after they took over the Federal Reserve in 1913, Christmas time. Because they allow money into the economy, then they take it out. When they take it out, there's no jobs, nobody can pay their bills. It's all a trickle-down thing here. If you take the money out, companies can't build more vehicles, farmers can't borrow money to grow crops. The whole thing goes right down to the little guy, and everybody winds up with nothing. And the elites with the banks and owning the Federal Reserve, these people buy up all the farms and property and businesses and stuff across the nation. And then they'll let the economy grow again, and so people can amass more wealth, and then they drop it again. And since 1913, they've done it at least 8 or 9 or 10 times. 2008 is a good example. And apparently they're getting ready to do it again in 2015, because everything is illogically high. Stock market, everything, house prices. Anyways, chapter 16. Existing and developing movements which are contributory to the open conspiracy and which must develop a common consciousness. The parable of Provider Island. And again, I'll just show you. I highlighted a little bit of stuff here. Consider, for example, the movement for a scientific study and control of population pressure. So it's all about people they don't want. I keep saying that, and it's true. Known popularly as the birth control movement. Remember, he was dating that girl who was into that and had a child by her? While he's married. He had his wife's permission. H.G. Wells. If a population of some area of high culture civilization attempts to restrict increase, if a population in some area of high civilization attempts to restrict increase, organize its economic life upon the methods of maximum individual productivity, individual productivity. Sounds like being a slave. And impose order and beauty upon its entire territory, that region will become irresistibly attractive to any adjacent festering mass of low-grade, highly productive population. See what they think of people? These elitists? World peace remains a vast aspiration. What they mean is world slavery. Then they won't have to have wars. World peace remains a vast aspiration until there is some substitute for the present competition of states for markets and raw materials, and some restraint upon population pressure. League of Nations societies and all forms of pacifist organizations are either futile or insincere until they come into line with the complementary propositions of the open conspiracy. Alright, moving on. The various social movements. They produce one woolly scheme after another for transferring the property in this or that or the other economic plan or interest from bodies of shareholders and company promoters to gangs of politicians or syndicates of workers to be steered to efficiency, it would seem, by pillars of cloud by day and pillars of fire by night. The Communist Party has trained a whole generation of disciples to believe that the overthrow of a vaguely apprehended capitalism is the simple solution of all human difficulties. In Moscow, communism has trampled capitalism and murdered 66 million Christians and good people. That's an easy way to get rid of any kind of capitalism or competition. Underfoot for 10 eventful years and still finds all the problems of social and political construction before it. They killed all those people and nothing changed. Except all those people were dead. And they destroyed all the Christian churches, but not the Jewish temples, according to what I have read. And I may not be right on everything, so do some homework. My book reviews are a good guide, but nothing substitute people doing individual research. The open conspiracy is a natural inheritor of socialist and communist enthusiasms. Did you hear that? The open conspiracy, H.G. Wells, is a natural inheritor of socialist and communist enthusiasms. And a lot of people keep saying socialism and communism are one and the same. Controlled by the Zionist Jewish folks, which include people in the Vatican, the Jesuits and bad people who have now become popes, and the Kabbalah, Church of Satan, high levels of the Freemasons, and other elitists all over the world. It may be in control of Moscow before it is in control of New York. Alright, well, hopefully we're almost done here. Chapter 17. The creative home, social group, and school. The present waste of idealistic will. Waste of idealistic will. Human society began with the family. The natural history of gregariousness is a history of the establishment of mutual toleration among human animals. Human animals. He calls us human animals. I wonder if he's Jewish, because they call non-Jews goyim, which means cattle. So H.G. Wells here says, mutual toleration among human animals so that a litter or a herd keeps together instead of breaking up. So he calls a family, calls us humans, and that as a family we act like a herd and together instead of breaking up. And they are trying to break up society, especially with the gay agenda and the New Age agenda and all those teachings and ridding the United States and the world of Christianity, at which they are moving forward at breakneck speed at destroying and discrediting at any cost, including infiltrating the churches and having the leaders do bad things. A unified progressive world community demands its own type of home and training. It needs to have its fundamental concepts firmly established in as many minds as possible, and to guard its children from the infection of the old racial and national hatreds and jealousies, old superstitions, I suppose they mean believing in Jesus, and bad mental habits of believing in Christianity and being moral, just ad-libbing here, and base interpretations of life. And again, I'm only reading a little bit of these pages, of these chapters, just trying to scoot through it. So pick just a little bit. There's a little bit more here I got. Chapter 18. Progressive development of the activities of the open conspiracy into a world control and commonwealth. The hazards of the attempt. We have now sketched out in these blueprints the methods by which the confused radicalism and constructive forces of the present time may, can, and probably will be drawn together about a core of modernized religions, feeling into one great and nefarious creative effort. Alright, Pax Mundi, which has become already the tantalized desire of great multitudes throughout the world. Pax Mundi. I'll have to go look that up. The open conspiracy will also be dissolving and repudiating many existing restrictions upon contact and many social prejudices. So the open conspiracy will be dissolving and putting down many existing restrictions upon conduct and many social prejudices. So it could very well be a crime to say anything negative about gay people. You'll be considered a hate monger. And there may be a jail sentence or a beheading involved if you do it 2 or 3 times. Or they come to your house and you don't declare you have a gun when they come to get it. You might be shot right on the spot, even though it's your constitutional right. They can't pass laws going against the Constitution, because then those laws are illegal laws. And if you're ever on the jury and you're going to convict somebody, he may very well have had a gun if they're trying to prosecute him. But because it was an illegal law, you can vote not guilty. There's a law that's illegal. You can't convict anybody. Whenever possible, the judge and the lawyers don't want you to know that, by the way. Get one of those little handbooks on the Constitution and read it. But then, if they catch you doing that, they're going to consider you as an insurgent and a terrorist. Welcome to H.G. Wells' New World Order. And what he calls his book here as a sample Bible guide to the New World Order. He said it here. I just read it. Whenever possible, the open conspiracy will advance by illumination, and persuasion. I'm thinking about the Illuminati now and all the Masonic lodges spread all over the world, an invisible army. And Obama has his the youth movement or something they've financed and created. We the people have no idea what's going on across this nation behind the scenes. I know that in Florida, Texas, California, secretly they're microchipping children. They advertise, know where your kid is at. If anybody abducts him, we'll be able to get him. But any child who refuses to take the microchip in those schools is not allowed to use a library card or a lunch card or any activities. They punish them severely. Alright, so whenever possible, the open conspiracy will advance by illumination and persuasion. But it has to advance, even from the outset, where it is not allowed to illuminate and persuade, it must fight. It first fights will probably be for the right to spread its system of ideas plainly and clearly throughout the world. There is, I suppose, a favor of treason about the assumption that any established government is provisional, temporary, and a quality of immorality in any criticism of accepted moral standards. So they're criticizing moral standards. So I, Rick Miracle, am a moral man and would not commit adultery knowingly. Because of that, I suppose you could say that I don't believe in committing adultery. It is the number 7 commandment. So where they have the websites that advertise to cheat on your husband or wife, does promote and market adulterous behavior. Because I don't approve of that, I suppose they would condemn me as a hater. And they would criticize me for my accepted moral standards. Maybe it's going to be a crazy world. But in ampler wisdom of the modern Atlantic communities, already touched by premonitions of change and futurity, has continually enlarged the common liberties of thought for some generations. They're marketing, they're mind controlling. Of course, the generations, the numbers are going to grow of people who don't believe in Jesus or believe in morality or believe in the commandments. The devil is the deceiver, And with the alien and UFOs books published, and we've gone over some of them in my videos, and we're going to go over some more, there is no doubt that these people were seeing either the entities or the craft. And the entities certainly seem like they're spiritual beings, demonic in nature, and angelic maybe. Because maybe some are good, maybe a lot of them are bad. One lady, accordingly, when she was being abducted, cried out in Jesus' name. You can see this on many books and videos, and the entity dumped her right there. Next thing that she knows, she was back in her bed. It is doubtful that there will be any serious resistance to the dissemination of these views. In the early organization of the open conspiracy in any of the English-speaking communities, or throughout the British Empire, or the Scandinavian countries, or in such liberal-minded countries as Holland, Switzerland, Republic, Germany, or France. France, in the hasty years after the war, submitted to some repressive legislation against the discussion of birth control. Alright, I want to try to wrap this up here with this last, it's not the last chapter. It is. So I'm going to complete this. You can see it says the end right there. Human life in the coming world community. This ought to be interesting. The new life that the open conspiracy struggles to achieve through us for our race is first a life of liberations. What they mean is Aleister Crowley's "do as thou wilt," a life of liberations. And not only from natural evils will man be largely free, he will not be left with his soul tangled, haunted by monstrous and irrational fears, and a prey of malicious impulse. Oh my God. They don't want anybody to believe in God. His undersoul will no longer be a mutinous cavern of ill-treated suppressions and of impulses repressed without understanding. Remember, this is the guy who had his wife give him permission to have sex with other women, including children. All these releases are plainly possible for him. Within the peace and freedom that the open conspiracy is winning for us, all these good things that escape us may now be ensued. How far can we anticipate the habitations and ways, the usages and adventures, the mighty employments, the ever-increasing knowledge and power of the days to come? And I'm only reading some highlighted stuff. You can go online to a used bookstore and probably find this book. $2 or $3. From any dream, however dismal and horrible, one can escape by realizing that it is a dream, by saying, I am awake. Well, every day when I see them sky spraying and dumping chemicals in the sky, or get in the news Thursday whenever the Supreme Court finally made a decision and said that no state can ban gay marriage, I'm wondering if I'm living in a dream. Am I going to wake up and things are going to be normal again? I worry about the young people. They'll never know a decent world. And if you go walk on the city streets, a lot of young people and old people look like complete zombies. Tattooed with crazy stuff from head to toe. Sometimes their whole bodies. Just saying, it is what it is. And with that, I'll finish the last two sentences. The open conspiracy is the awakening of mankind from a nightmare, an infantile nightmare of the struggle of existence, for existence. A time will come when men will sit with history before them and with some old newspaper before them and ask incredibly, was there ever such a world? I ask right now, is this world we're living in, and Jade Helm, whether or not it's they don't really pull it off and they just have an exercises and don't bring it live, the fact that they're spending billions on it and intimidating people across the nation is certainly not good for the economy or people's mental sanity. It's an intimidation, at the minimum. And the sky spraying, in my opinion, is destructive towards human life and our environment. The bees, fish, Fukushima is destroying the whole Pacific. There's no mistaking that. And General Wesley Clark said that the Middle East wars were all planned. 9/11 was planned. Building 7 didn't even get hit by a plane, and it was pulled. You can't rig a building for pulling in a couple hours. It takes weeks. A lot of planning. So I'm wondering, where is this world we are living in going to take us? And in the future, like HG says, anybody looking at an old newspaper, old TV show or something, like Andy Griffith even, and will they say, was there ever such a world? Thank you for watching my videos. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, pass the video on to your friends.